Welcome back to Askewed Reviews. This week we've had a theme week, and that theme was 80s fantasy movies. This is also going to be a fan request, and it is for the 1987 adventure fantasy comedy romance, The Princess Bride. Here is your trivia question for today. What are the three dangers of the fire swamp? The answer will be at the end of this video. Our story starts in a modern time where we have Fred Savage, who is a child that is unfortunately sick, and his grandfather, Peter Falk, that is here to make him feel better by reading him a story. And of course, that story just so happens to be The Princess Bride. So, in this story within a story, we have our main characters a local common woman named Buttercup and a farmhand named Wesley. Now, these two have fallen madly in love with each other, but Wesley has decided that he needs to be able to take care of them financially. So he is going to cross the sea to go get a job and hopefully be able to set up their future. Unfortunately for Buttercup, Wesley does not return, as he has apparently been killed by the dread pirate Roberts. A few years have now passed, and the local prince has decided that he is going to choose someone to marry, and that individual is in fact Buttercup. Now, before the marriage can go through, the princess, or soon to be princess, is kidnapped by three individuals Inigo, Vicini, and Fezzik. They take Buttercup across the sea, but soon realize that another ship is following them. Now, upon that ship is a man in black, known as the Dread Pirate Roberts, and he appears to be after the princess himself. Now, the man in black must show his skill against a master swordsman, his strength against a giant, and his wits against a tactician. Once he has bested all three, he now reveals his identity to Buttercup. In fact, he is Wesley. Now that both of them are back together, will their love be strong enough to keep them together? Or will Prince Humperdinck and his men, who are hot on their trail, track them down and end their reunion? William Goldman is the writer for this film, and he's also the one who wrote the book that the film is based off of. The way he actually came up with the title is he asked his two daughters what they would like a book to be about. One of them said a princess, one of them said a bride, and he just mashed it together. Rob Reiner is the director for this film, and what's interesting is, back when he was part of All in the Family, his father, Carl Reiner, suggested that he read this book because he was friends with William Goldman, and Rob Reiner fell in love with it instantly. And before Rob Reiner, there was actually quite a few directors that had planned to try to turn this into a movie, like Francois Truffaut, Robert Redford, Norman Jewison, and Richard Lester. Now, the inspiration for the Dread Pirate Roberts was taken from two sources. Number one, Zorro for the look, obviously, if you just take away the hat and the cape, and there was an actual pirate named Bartholomew Roberts, also known as Black Bart. Now, I truly can't imagine anyone else but Cary Elwes playing the character of Wesley, but apparently Christopher Reeve was up for the role. Now, Robin Wright was also not the only possibility for the character of Buttercup. In fact, William Goldman felt that Carrie Fisher would have been the perfect choice, but there were some other actresses as well. The other actresses that tried out were Uma Thurman, Susie Amos, Courtney Cox, Alexandra Paul, Meg Ryan, and Sean Young. There were also two other actresses that were kind of almost possibilities. Apparently, Brooke Shields' mother was vying for her to be up for the role of Buttercup, but they felt that she was too much of a quote unquote celebrity to actually take on the role. And apparently, Whoopi Goldberg actually really lobbied hard to play the character, but she felt like they didn't take her seriously. Sting was actually up for the role of Prince Humperdinck, although I do think Chris Sarandon did such an amazing job. And if you don't already know this, Chris Sarandon is actually the voice for the character of Jack Skellington in The Nightmare Before Christmas. However, Danny Elfman does the singing. Wallace Shawn is such a great Vizzini, but apparently Danny DeVito and Richard Dreyfuss were both up for the role as well. As for Fezzik, Andre the Giant was the best choice. But there were some other actors who were possibly up for the role, including Arnold Schwarzenegger, Liam Neeson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Richard Kyle, Lou Ferrigno, and even Carol Strucken. Apparently, one of the reasons why Carrie Elwes and Robin Wright work so well together is both of them actually developed a crush on each other during the film. However, they never actually acted upon it and never actually dated. Apparently, while filming this scene, Christopher Guest, as Count Rugen, kept just slightly missing Carrie Elwes's head. So Elwes just said, "Go ahead and hit me." He did, and actually knocked him unconscious, and that's actually the scene that they use in the movie. The sword fight scene is actually 100% Mandy Patinkin and Carrie Elwes, except for the sequence where Wesley spins and does a flip on a bar. But everything else was them, and they actually trained incredibly hard with professional Olympic fencers. Something that's really fascinating to notice is both Inigo and Wesley state that they are actually not left handed. Now, if you pay attention, Inigo does pretty much everything else with his right hand other than starting the fight, so he may have already given away that he isn't actually left handed. However, though, Wesley, the entire time, including even the side that he keeps the sword on, is done with his left hand, even when he undoes his boot and drops the rocks out of it. Now, before the sword fighting started happening between Mandy Patinkin and Christopher Guest, Guest did not take any kind of sword fighting lessons. But after continually getting hit and stabbed by Patinkin, he decided to start learning. Now, apparently, the biggest reason why Guest needed to learn fencing is Patinkin would get so impassioned in what he was doing because his father actually passed away in 1972 due to cancer, and he just focused in on treating the six fingered man as if it was the cancer that killed his father. Carrie Elwes recalls a time when they were doing this scene on the parapets, and apparently Andre the Giant let loose such a large fart that it actually shook the plywood on the set, and it even lasted for 16 seconds, and it was counted out by the crew. Apparently, at the end of it, Rob Reiner even asked Andre, "Are you okay?" And he responded back, "I am now, boss." Billy Crystal apparently improved almost all of his lines as Miracle Max, and they were so funny that almost everyone had to leave the set, including Rob Reiner, and even at one point they had to put in a body double for Carrie Elwes just so that they could leave and laugh. There is actually no such thing as iocane powder. It was created specifically for The Princess Bride. In the film, the two countries are Florin and Guilder, which are actually just two names of Dutch currency. And speaking of countries, none of these actors are from the countries that their characters are from. Wallace Shawn is not Sicilian, he is Jewish. Mandy Patinkin is not in fact Spanish, he is in fact also Jewish. And Andre the Giant is not in fact Turkish, but he is French. The director Rob Reiner does technically make an appearance in the film, as he's actually the one who does all the sounds and voiceover for the ROUSs. Within Fred Savage's bedroom, we can actually notice quite a few Easter eggs. One, that apparently this beginning sequence takes place in Chicago, as there are cubs and bear stuff everywhere. Two, there are little He-Man figures right behind him, back behind his bed. There's also a Santa on his closet, so it's clearly around Christmas time. And if you were curious about the video game on the television, it's one called Hardball. The movie is very quotable. In fact, some of its most popular lines, like "As you wish" is said 7 times, "Inconceivable" is said 5, and "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya, you killed my father, prepared to die" is said 6 times. This movie is even still popular in media today. For instance, they recreated the bedroom scene in Deadpool 2 when it came to doing advertisements for it. There's even what's called a home movie redo of it, where a bunch of celebrities, including ones that were actually in the film, are essentially recreating it. And you can find this kind of randomly put together version of it online. Now, if you can't get enough of The Princess Bride, there's actually lots of options for you. There was a computer game, there's a bunch of different board games, there's an RPG book. Everything about this movie and everything related to it is fantastic. It is absolutely my number one favorite movie of all time. So I'm going to give this one a 5 out of 5. Now, as for the trivia question from the beginning of this video, what are the 3 dangers of the fire swamp? You have the fire spouts, the lightning sand, and the ROUSs. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews. If there is a movie you'd like to get a review, just mention it in the comments. And as always, like, comment, share, and subscribe.